Got earnings, and the CEO says it's going to be an Xbox hybrid. Happy Friday, friends. It is Friday. We could be, I guess, Saturday or June 3rd, or I guess sometimes the YouTube algorithm surfaces these videos up many months later. But here we are at the end of October. It is Halloween in the United States. Hopefully you had a wonderful week. Microsoft dropped earnings. We got more confirmations about what's going on with Xbox. So let's dive in because there is a good amount to talk about this week. Now, Microsoft dropped its earnings, $77.7 billion, which is that's a lot of money. That is basically one Activision acquisition in revenue. Now, that's not net income. The net income was about $27.7 billion dues going into the bank account at the end of the day, which are just outrageous numbers. Everything pretty much across the board seemed like it was doing very well, except for Xbox hardware, which we will talk a little bit about later. Overall, Microsoft will continue to survive yet again another quarter. So I know some people are worried about that. No, they weren't. Nobody was. Also announced this week, Microsoft has come to terms with OpenAI about how they're completely rigmarolled their organizational structure, and they're going to end up with 27% of the OpenAI Public Benefit Corporation, which is roughly valued at $135 billion dues for a company that's taken off, although they're not profitable. So we'll see how this goes. They're supposedly eyeing up an IPO at some point and trying to get to a $1 trillion valuation, which kind of continues to explain why they can raise money just at will. We'll see. We'll see how that all kind of continues to flow here out. But Microsoft is happy they get access to a lot of their models and everything else until like 2032, which basically gives Microsoft about 7-8 years to come up with their own model that is vaguely on par with what they are doing. So just buys Microsoft more time. Speaking of buying time, well, not really. Microsoft is in court in Australia for allegedly screwing over those customers by the court's opinions, or the government's opinion, I should say. This really comes down to when Microsoft raised the price of M365 Consumer and just force-fed Copilot into there, raising the price, and not making it super obvious that there was a classic subscription option that would allow the consumer to use that and keep the same pricing, but they kind of just forced on the higher rates, and Australia's saying, you can't do that. That's not good. So they're taking them to court. We'll see how that one shakes out eventually. Microsoft also announced this week they are quote-unquote simplifying Windows updates so that you can better understand them. So now there will be monthly out-of-band security updates, monthly preview, non-security updates, .NET Framework security updates, .NET Framework non-security updates, driver updates, and AI component updates. So they're just being a little bit more detailed about what bits are coming down the pipeline at the end of the day. And so that is a good thing. I think that is very much a good thing. I just wish that they would just go back to Patch Tuesday, because it used to be Patch Tuesday, now it's Patch Every Day. And so that's just the way that things just kind of sort of work out. Now, one of the more interesting bits of news did not come directly from Microsoft, but came from Faint, is going to be shipping a potential quote-unquote exclusive update. I don't know if we want to refer to it as that. They'll probably call it something else. For the new Snapdragon Elite X2 chipsets that are coming, that will have some functionality that won't be coming to every AI PC, even though Microsoft says every PC is now an AI PC. And so what will be happening is more than likely that will be rolled up into 26H2. So yeah, there may not be a 26H1. We'll see how Microsoft starts doing this. But that might, I don't know if that's try to incentivize people to buy these new Snapdragon things, if it's a deal with Qualcomm where they have to do this, so they have to get those features out there first, and that's why Qualcomm continues to support Windows and all that. We don't know. We'll find out. Microsoft will probably give us some not very transparent and hard to understand reasoning for all this, and then we'll see. So maybe the 26H1 really isn't. I don't know. Microsoft's got to tell us, so we'll find out eventually. Now, on to the gaming news of the week. Satya Nadella did a big thing this week where he started talking about Xbox. We got to be real clear. Microsoft is literally telling us what they're going to do. They are not hiding what they're doing. They have told us multiple times, many different ways, that this is an Xbox. Xbox is a hybrid PC. Windows is the biggest gaming. So when the CEO of Microsoft comes out and says, remember, the biggest gaming business is the Windows business. To us, gaming on Windows, and of course Steam, has built a massive marketplace on top of it, and they've done a very successful job. Now, we're the largest publisher after Activision deal. Therefore, we want to be a fantastic publisher, similar approach to what we did with Office, which is weird analogy, by the way. We want to be everywhere on every platform. So we want to make sure, whether it's consoles, whether it's PCs, whether it's mobiles, whether it's cloud gaming or TV, we just want to make sure games are being enjoyed everywhere. So the office analogy spooked a lot of people because that's like role productivity and subscription and lots of other things. But what I think he means is like, remember, there was a big kerfluffle, if you will, about getting Office on the iPad many, many years ago. That has worked out just fine. So they're looking at it through the same lens of gaming and games. Games need to be everywhere. And so Windows is the biggest gaming platform, and so there's another quote too from him where he's saying like people think of Xbox and Windows as two different things, and it's a lot of wincing of the eyeballs from people who use Xbox because yeah, technically they have a similar backend, but nobody boots up their Xbox knowing it's Windows or thinking that it's Windows, right? It's a bespoke experience, and they're trying to bring that over to Windows, and so far it's not very good, but I guess enough time will bring those things together. But yeah, so anyway, speaking of the CEO, Xbox hardware was down 29%, and basic service revenue was mostly flat. They did call out Game Pass as seeing some growth, and then there was a decline in first-party performance during the quarter. Remember, this is Q1, or what we would think of Q3 on a calendar year, and so it doesn't include this latest quarter and the price changing and all that. So Xbox was basically just a flat. Revenue was down, I think, overall about 2%. But you got to understand that they're selling a lot fewer consoles. So if revenue is dropping only 2%, but console hardware went down 29%, that means they're growing revenue elsewhere. And so those are higher margin things outside of hardware. So while it's easy to say, hey, it's flat, that's not really much of anything. They're trending in the right direction. They're selling fewer consoles from a business perspective, maybe not a loyal fan perspective. They're selling fewer consoles, but they're making money elsewhere. So it kind of evens out. And so there you go. There we go. Yes, and what else we got on the agenda here? So we got Xbox app continues to be updated, faster downloads, better shader delivery for Xbox Ally. This is the new hub of Xbox, right? That you got to remember. Yes, the console is still there, and that's an experience. But like, know that the PC is going to become this hybrid experience. This Xbox app is like going to be the central hub for everything, and so this is the new future. So be paying attention to what they're doing with the Xbox app because a lot is happening there. Also, it sounds like there's going to be an Xbox Indie event, according to Jez Corden. Watch for a lot of Play Anywhere announcements. I mean, at this point, everything is everywhere going forward. Like, I cannot see any future where they only ship a game that only works on the Xbox console or only works on the PC. I think those times are completely gone, and that's just the way that it is going forward. So that's your wrap up of the tech and gaming news. The questions of the week, always my favorite part. Let's dive in here, my friend. Steadmeister says, given that Microsoft sees Xbox more like Office, yes, what do you think about the future of the brand? Is hardware and games wise? So hardware, I think we already kind of know the story here, right? If you go back and look, and I've missed this a couple times since it's been said, but they refer to first-party hardware. Yeah, we've never really referred to hardware in ever like as first party hardware, right? First party, there's first party games, third party games, like that's been a nomenclature for a long time. But Microsoft has been saying things like first party hardware. Just that saying that really points us down the path that third-party hardware is going to exist. Now, you could say like Mad Cat controllers or whatever, Logitech, like Razer controllers, like those things might be third-party hardware, but I think you're splitting hairs there. I think really what they're saying is like there's going to be first-party hardware, and that's going to come from Microsoft, and it's going to be, the proper Xbox premium console, but then there's going to be third-party hardware. I think that's something we can imply from what is going on here. And then he says, I feel like there's a loss of sort of like, what is Xbox by doing this? And I tend to agree, but Microsoft has already shown that they're a pretty brutal and ruthless business, and they are mostly interested in growing their brand and their presence, and that's the way they're going to do it. Before anybody like writes off Xbox, we really need to see what Microsoft does first-party hardware-wise and what that experience is like. I hope it's not too Windows-like. That's not the biggest concern in my head, that I'm going to go spend a whole bunch of dollar dues, put a thing under the box, under the TV, and then go from there, which... By the way, somebody did ask. You won't see it in this question list. Yes, I did finally buy new tires for my car. The podcast a few weeks ago was like, I need to either buy a gaming PC, which I really still want to do, or I need to buy new tires for my car. And everybody's like, you got to buy tires for your car. And so a couple $1,000s later, new tires on the car and no gaming PC for Brad yet. So anyways, moving on. Will Smith says, Xbox Content Services revenue grew 1% in the last quarter. Do you think that's on track with what Microsoft and Xbox projected, or did they underperform? Great question. I would suspect that they slightly underperformed. That would be my expectation, given what we know, and given that the price changes that we saw. If we saw them overperforming and continued growth, then that would be, I think, that would be why I don't know if we would see pricing increases. Because I continue to believe that Microsoft believes that they have maxed out, roughly speaking, the number of people who will be in Game Pass. Like their growth is slowed a lot. And so now they're focusing on turning the dial on revenue rather than user growth, which are two very different things. And that is why we saw the changing, which will then impact this next quarter, because last quarter was like basically flat, if you will. So also with the new Xbox being high-end and will probably cost $1,000, is Xbox pushing casual consumers to Sony if they don't want to spend that much money but still want a console? Plausibly, I tend to believe though that decision has already been made. Not meaning like pushing consumers there, but like people have already chosen their tribe, and like I own Xbox consoles. The likelihood of me buying a PlayStation is really small at this point. I would just, and this is why I end up buying new tires, I'd rather just get a gaming PC. But that's the route that makes sense. So if you're an Xbox user, you're just going to go to the PC. And people who are going to Best Buy and looking at two consoles, yes, that is a very valid argument, but console user growth has been relatively stagnant. Phil Spencer said many years ago that every year the average age of a console gamer increases by 1, which means that, hey, just people who have consoles are just getting older. Like there's not a new massive wave of people coming in. And so, but yes, you do run that risk. That is part of it. But also those third-party Xbox consoles might be the lower cost entry point. So Matt Bear says, with Xbox promising, or at least saying, that our entire library will move forward, what if this is another promise they can't keep? Well, that is a great thing. That is a very bold claim by Microsoft. I suspect that they already have this figured out. This isn't rocket surgery for them. They own the platform top to bottom, and so they should be able to do that. I don't see an issue where any game that is currently backwards compatible, because remember, some titles have already fallen off. There are titles that are not backwards compatible with the current generation that existed previously. And so he raises the question about licensing or tech issues. I think licensing is probably the bigger thing, but I suspect with the backwards compatibility that has already been done, that they already crossed that chasm, if you will. And so I don't think that's going to be an issue so much going forward, and that's where they are. Mr. PKI says, we all know the CEO of Xbox is Phil Spencer, plays games all the time. Does the Xbox president Sarah Bond also play console games? What is her gamer tag? I have no idea. I would assume she plays games. That would be very odd, although it's not, it's usually not the best fits, but sometimes you end up with executives who don't play games into roles that don't necessarily align, but because they have a good business sense, they can figure it out. I do not know, but we all know Xbox P3. Mr. PKI also says, Satya Nadella is no longer doing I forgot to bring this up. Thank you for reminding me. Mr. PKI says Satya Nadella is no longer doing the keynote at Ignite, which is a huge change. Is that a signal of broader change? Is that not a technical keynote and not a sales keynote? So Judson is going to be doing the keynote. Satya is not going to Ignite. If Microsoft isn't thinking that Satya is going to retire soon, they are like really screwing up the narrative right now. Like everything that they are doing is talking about Satya might be like planning his exit, right? They just promoted Judson, gave him a ton more responsibility. Satya is now doing just technical work. You have most people thinking Amy Hood is running like a lot of the operation day to day. And then you see Ignite, one of Microsoft's biggest conferences of the year. He is not there. You got to remember in the corporate speak that when your CEO goes to something, that means like the company's behind what's going on. Like it's a big deal. Like, right, the CEO is here. When the CEO is like, nah, I'm not going this year. What messages? What is that saying? Like to all the professionals who are going, they're like, this is a cool conference, but not even the CEO could show up. Like, right? Yeah. Thank you for reminding me that. I completely forgot about that. Revo says, do you feel the main push for premium hardware for the next Xbox is a push for better performance with xCloud? No, not particularly. If the rumors are true about Magnus rivaling a GTX RTX 5080, which is getting high praise with GeForce Now, wouldn't you have potential, especially if all these are, okay, trying to wrap that all up. So, a lot of the cloud performance doesn't have anything to do with on-prem device. So the performance is more in the stack, like the technology that streams it all out, because these things are latency sensitive, if I could enunciate there correctly. And so that has more to do with the actual technology rather than the hardware. Microsoft has good GPUs and everything else. Because you got to remember, these things can stream to mobile and stream everywhere else. So it depends more on what's in the server rather than what's on the endpoint at the end of the day. So I don't think it's necessarily about xCloud performance at the end of the day. I would honestly be surprised, and there'll probably be some random metric if it is. A GTX 5080 is a very stout chip, very expensive chip, right? Those things are what, like $2,000? I don't know if we're going to see performance levels that high. I don't, and I don't know if it's needed, right? 4K 60 is what is needed, and chasing a GTX 5080 would be pretty stout. I hope it. Let me clarify that. I hope that's correct. But if they have that level of performance, getting to $1,000 price point becomes more challenging based on the pricing of GPUs today. And someone will point out, hey, like things go down over time or whatever. Like that hasn't really trended all that well. Like 3090s are still really expensive, mostly because of all the crypto mining and LLM. So GPU pricing is still considered a very premium product at this point. Danny says, happy Friday, man. Happy Friday to you, Danny. Do you think that Xbox releasing their next gen in 2026 will put them in front of the race? There is no, so here's the thing. Console generations, in my opinion, are dead. Like that race, there is no race. Like Microsoft has never won the console race against Sony. Like that's just Xbox 360 was the closest. Did they pass them? I can't remember. But Xbox One and this current generation, like there is no more race, right? And it's even more so not just the hardware. Look at all the games that still ship with a PS4 version or an Xbox One version, Call of Duty. Now, we're just starting to see the end of those platforms being supported. It's not nearly as important as it used to be. Like the next generation Xbox will come out and they will still ship games for the Series S and X for many, many, many years down the road. Same with PlayStation, right? And it's going to be the same way. So I don't think there's really a race anymore. Alex says, wouldn't a PC with an Xbox logo on it just be a PC with branding of an unpopular nowadays brand? Is it even possible for a PC to have what I imagine Xbox One emulated games with the X Series X PC versions? I think you're thinking about this partially correct. The emulation is like the least probably of the problems. Microsoft knows exactly how to emulate this stuff. They literally do it on the current gen stuff. So Xbox One emulation, not an issue. I think it's more of the Xbox Series S and X games going forward potentially is a little bit dicier, but even then it's the Series S and X are so PC like that I don't think that's going to be the problem that most people have. There was conversation between myself and another individual on Twitter /X, whatever it's called, about DRM, because that was one of the primary issues with like really old title games is like, hey, they had really heavy DRM and you got to work around that. However, remember, Microsoft's already done a heavy lift of backwards compatibility up to current generation. I don't think that's going to be a problem going forward. I am Mark Smith says, hi Brad, I have had convos with people on social media about the next console and its ability to play physical media games. Do you think it will be a dual boot machine with the Xbox console OS and Windows, or will older physical discs run via some kind of emulation through Windows? Wonderful question. I am not sure how much physical media is going to be even involved with the next generation. And I mean that in the best and worst of ways. Microsoft is already shipping consoles today, default without it. If you want a disk drive, you're paying already a premium. I have no idea how they're going to do it for next generation with this hybrid PC setup. It might just be an external drive, but that thing's going to be priced pretty premium to make that work because it's already a niche market at this point. And as people are going to say, but I have this huge collection. And I don't have a great answer for that. Microsoft is just kind of being like, look, digital's the future, man. Like that's where everybody's been. So catch up. And so unfortunately, I think that's going to be. As for a dual boot machine, we already see the model. It's not so much dual boot. Just go look at the ROG Ally. That is the exact model I suspect that Microsoft will be replicating and following for future console releases. Rafik says, hi Brad, what do you make of the comparison that Nadella and the Xbox executive are making between Xbox and TikTok? Is it normal and logical? Because even me these days, I am watching podcasts about video games more than playing them. So the point that Nadella was making here is that gaming falls into the entertainment bucket. And what is the highest driver of entertainment these days? We all know doom scrolling, right? Just watching short videos and like all that. That is competing in what he is saying with your time to go buy games and play games. And so they are trying to compete against that. It's a not a bad analogy, and I understand where he's coming from because it's like, hey, you finished work, you now have 3 hours to do whatever. Are you going to play games? Are you going to scroll on TikTok? Are you going to go running, go exercise? Like, these things all compete with gaming and dollar spending on gaming. And so that is where he is going. Now, watching podcasts about video games, again, falls into that category. He said TikTok, but YouTube obviously plays into that. Make sure you hit that subscribe button because we're on YouTube. And that is where I think he is going with that conversation. So, I hate passwords. No, seriously, 4809. Do you believe that Microsoft has plans to merge Xbox gaming into the broader PC category called Windows Gaming? What would that even look like? So Microsoft does some weird accounting at the end of the day for units that don't always perform as expected. Here's a perfect example. Surface. You can no longer look up how many Surface devices. I always grab the Duo, which I keep over here, but like, this device is a Surface. I've got tons of them all over. You can no longer look up how many Surface devices were sold. It used to be a $2 billion a quarter business, at least in terms of revenue. You can no longer find that information. It's just lumped into Windows OEM revenue. And so the question becomes, is gaming going to fall into that? The only reason I hesitate here, because I don't think it's an impossible scenario. The only problem here is that they spent nearly $80 billion on various acquisitions, and actually even more than that. And so to just say like, yeah, we're just going to lump this under here, under Windows, and start hiding it that way, I think investors would probably start barking a little bit at that, because this is such a large expenditure right now, or has been. And so to remove that from a line item perspective would not be in good faith. But Microsoft might do it because they just might be like, we don't really care. And so we'll just report Xbox service revenue. I mean, they've already hidden a lot. You can't tell, like, here, they've already hid so much. How many Xbox Game Pass subscribers are there? We don't know. How many consoles did they sell? We don't know. There's no number there. They give us vague numbers like 500 million monthly active users, but they don't report that every single month. They just have these numbers. They give us service revenue and they give us hardware revenue sales, which that might go away. That might be the next logical thing, is like, hey, we're not going to tell you how much we're selling in hardware. We're just telling you content and service business because that's what's important. So there you go. There you go. That's all I got for you guys. That is all that I've got for you guys this week. Hopefully everybody had a wonderful week. Happy Halloween to everybody. Make sure to keep it subscribed here, because on the BS on this podcast is me.